What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Relationship Like Growth Live. Sorry, we're starting a little bit late here. You don't get to listen to our intro music for a change, but we'll still have some fun today. So, let me just open up my chats here so I can see what everybody's saying. If you are here, give me a little message. Say hi, so I know you're here. All right. So we're going to be getting a little bit philosophical today, if you will. I know we've been getting pretty tactical last few sessions. We are going to get a little more philosophical as opposed to that today. We'll get to some tactics toward the end. Matt, hey, what's going on? Paul, how are you? We're going to get into sales and marketing alignment as a topic, but I'm going to set the stage with some of the history around the topic, which I think is important. That I think this is often forgotten and is a big reason why this is still an issue these days. Talk about some new ideas, I would say, around it. We're going to focus on mindsets, and then we'll get into things like measurement and what alignment really looks like, and things like that. We'll end there. As usual, throw out some questions, comments as we're going, and I will try to answer them. If we need to take a detour, we will. So, all right, here's I mentioned in the beginning, we'll talk about history. So if you look at the problem of sales and marketing misalignment, I'm going to share a couple of things that I think folks will find interesting. This has been an issue for well over a decade, almost 2 decades. So let me share some things here. If you look at search terms, here's what you see. Going back to 2004, you see people searching for marketing and sales and marketing alignment. Okay. I also found back to, this was April of, when is this dated? April 2005. It's a sales and marketing alignment benchmarking report for marketing profs. Okay. And I'm not going to read through this whole thing, but the reason I'm bringing this up is if you look at everything literally just about everything that's out there, whether it be HBR articles or this thing for marketing profs or content from HubSpot, et cetera, you'll find things that look literally the same. So we've been talking about this for, almost 20 years, yet the problem still persists. That means there's something fundamentally wrong, because when you look at all the stuff that's out there, you'll see things like, oh, well, sales and marketing are not aligned on goals, so let's align on revenue. All right. Sales and marketing are not communicating enough. Well, let's have more meetings and Slack channels and whatever. Content isn't being used, or the right content isn't available to sales reps. So let's create feedback loops between sales and marketing to make sure we get the right content out there. There's not alignment on who the target audience or target list is. So let's create personas and align on personas and ABM and things like that. Well, literally the same stuff has been out there, like I said, for 15 to 20 years already. Yet we're still having this conversation. So, and if you look at most orgs, they still have these same problems, this misalignment between sales and marketing. Why is that? If there's a known solution out there for 20 years, there's no way this many companies should be having this problem, yet they are. There's a fundamental issue. right? There's every piece of advice out there just about is tactical, right? More and better communication, let's align on goals. And there's nothing, to be fair, I don't think there's anything wrong with any of those things. I think they need to happen, at least at a high level. But there's an underlying issue that exists. And there's virtually nothing out there that really talks about, at least from a sales and marketing alignment perspective, about focusing on the customer, being customer obsessed. We see that more in product marketing. We see it more in customer success because it fits fits those job descriptions, if you will. But we don't really see it as a whole, as a problem with sales and marketing alignment. And really, this comes down to relationships. Obviously, not surprising. Relationship-like growth, haha. But the reality is that most of the activation around this focuses on the wrong thing. I think one thing we need to look at is also, why is this rift even in existence in the first place? Why is there this rift between sales and marketing? And I think if we look back through the years, if you will, the analogy that I'll pose to all of you is the sales hunter persona has been out there for a long time, right? Like, hey, and I might really piss off some sales folks here. I apologize in advance, but it's the whole thing of, the caveman going out there and killing the saber-toothed tiger kind of thing. Hey, look what I brought. Right. And we sort of look in awe still to this day to this thing of like the sales reps are able to go out and get large pieces of business and things like that. The sales hunter persona is definitely a big one. Marketing historically has been seen more as the farmer, right? In terms of like, hey, look what I planted. Look at this pretty field I've got here. Let's see what happens once it grows. And I think that has shifted over time, where now, instead of, hey, let me go out there and kill this wild bison, it's more of a corporate ranching operation from a sales perspective, right? Looking at process and standardization and automation and all these kinds of things, which there maybe isn't necessarily anything wrong with them individually, but it's creating part of the problem because it's focusing on the outcome, which is revenue. And every salesperson out there has a quota they need to hit. I get that. Every company has sales targets and revenue targets they need to hit. Totally get that. That makes sense. But we're focusing on predictability of revenue, and we're trying to build these funnels and waterfalls and predictable revenue models in the SaaS side, at least with SDRs and things like that. Obviously, it's very different in kind of the industry we work with, often in the professional services space and things like that. But either way, it's missing this focus on the customer. Everything is sales-led. We're not really focused on building relationships with the sources of revenue, which is customers, influencers, partners, etc. And again, if we look at this evolution, take that example, right? So sales is now corporate ranching, marketing is now corporate farming, large corporate farming. And if you look at that analogy, like we're ruining the soil, we're having, less nutritious food, all this kind of stuff. Again, I don't want to get into those types of details necessarily, but from an analogy perspective, we're doing the same thing. Like we're focusing on the wrong stuff. We're focusing on scale for the sake of scale rather than quality of relationships and building these relationships for long-term, revenue gain. and margin and things like that. And that gets us into incentives. Incentives are also an issue, right? If you look at most comp plans for sales and marketing, they're incentivized on what, right? They're incentivized on how many meetings did you set? How much revenue did you bring in this given quarter? Marketing is incentivized on how many leads did you bring in, or how many, even, sometimes it's meeting set too. But we're generally not looking at things like LTV and profitability and margin and referral revenue and things like that. And as we get into measurement, that's where I'm going to focus on, because I think that's the piece that's missing. So again, if we think about mindsets, because it all starts from mindsets, or all the way from the leadership perspective, we're trying to be predictable. If you look at the executive level, so CEOs, CFOs, COOs, CROs, etc., every business, especially the bigger it gets, really requires more and more predictability, because unpredictable outcomes are a huge risk, right? I mean, imagine having really unpredictable outcomes consistently when you're a publicly traded company. Like, no way. But this need for predictability is causing us to do things across both sales and marketing that are simply detrimental. So, not to mention, in a lot of organizations in B2B, there's not the right rigor and infrastructure from a measurement perspective to get the revenue predictability that you need. Right? It's a lot of top-down forecasting. At best, maybe you're doing some bottom-up, but it's, again, based on what do we need, how many meetings do we need to set, things like that. And again, those aren't necessarily bad things on their own, but when you are only using that while completely ignoring how relationships are built, that's what causes misalignment. I would say in certain industries, marketing is getting ahead of that, and marketing is starting to look at more long-term stuff, but a lot of sales orgs are still very quarter by quarter led. You're not looking at long-term revenue and LTV as a metric. You're not incentivized by it, so you can't be blamed as a sales rep. But a lot of that is what's causing the situation. So we're trying to predict the wrong things. We're trying to predict how much revenue we're going to get instead of predicting, well, how many healthy relationships are we going to build? Because revenue is an outcome of relationships. Revenue doesn't happen on its own, especially in the B2B space, and especially in highly complex consultative sales environments, whether that be consulting, whether that be other professional services, whether that be enterprise software sales or manufacturing. Relationships are where the revenue really comes from. I have this conversation consistently with CEOs. They're usually coming to me with, hey, we want to, we really got to increase our top of funnel. We need to get our sales team more leads inbound. Great. Sounds good. We want to do paid search, or we need to do more SEO. Very tactical. And the question almost always for me is, well, awesome. Where does your revenue come from right now? Oh, well, it's all from partnerships and employee referrals and client referrals and this, that, and the other. Okay, cool. How do you think that this tactical inbound implementation and transactional type of activity, how is that going to jive with your consultative sales process that follows? It's not. And that is how a lot of this misalignment gets built as well from the very beginning. So really having a deep understanding of where revenue actually comes from, which relationships are driving it, opens up a whole lot of opportunities to align around, right? From a activity perspective, ABM was meant to be at one point the saving grace, if you will, right? Hey, let's align sales and marketing around target accounts and focus all our efforts on and marketing activity and sales activity around specific accounts and personas. And great, that's awesome in theory. But then what happened is a lot of the ABM vendors and the activation that happened based on that on that software really kind of bastardized the idea. So instead of really building relationships, we're focused on building, activity and serving ads to target accounts, display ads and things like that, and really creating a bunch of noise. That's not relationship building, right? And if you look at what's happening now, right, all the AI stuff out there and the automation that was there beforehand, we are accelerating the wrong things. So we're increasing the noise, both in sales and marketing, right? We're automating when it's more content for marketing, more outreach from sales, more cold emails, more cold calls. I'm seeing right now ads from I can't remember the name of the company, and if I did, I don't know. I don't want to call anybody out, but it's an AI voice bot that can now supposedly make cold calls, right? And it can do it 24/7, this and the other. And it's like, why are we doing this? How is this possibly going to help us build relationships? Sure, this thing can, in theory, based on the demo, have more conversations throughout the day. Okay, fine. At a much lower cost. But does anybody really want a cold call these days? I saw a post from somebody in the cybersecurity space yesterday, I think it was. And it was literally talking about like, hey, I don't even mind cold email. But the problem with cold email is there's so much of it and all of it is pitching. I want to learn. This is not me. This is this person that's in the, I think she was VP level in the cybersecurity space. Like, I want to learn. I want to learn the new trends. I want to know what's going on out there. I want to be invited to events, all this kind of stuff. But stop pitching me for the love of God. Right. So we're ruining the channels that we even have access to. We probably have ruined them, honestly, a lot of them when it comes to outbound, because we're focused on the wrong things. We have aligned on the wrong model. And it's a model that maybe worked back, 10 years ago, let's just say, but it's not working anymore. I just had a conversation with a high-performing sales rep a couple of days ago, or last week, sorry. And he's in a new role, and he's pretty much saying, look, I'm making dials, I'm sending cold emails, and it's crickets. So we're trying to automate and do the wrong things. And again, we're aligned on, even at best, if you're aligned on your the right persona and the right target accounts, and even if your message is right and it resonates, if all you're doing is digital spam and you're just putting a bunch of stuff in front of them all the time and pitching, whether it be through retargeting or through email or cold call, whatever it is, across both sales and marketing, you're not really building a relationship. So that's the core part of the problem, is the alignment it's not as much about the goals, because there are a lot of teams out there that are aligned on a revenue target now. And guess what? Their sales reps are still missing their quotas in a lot of instances. Yeah, and in a lot of these cases, the marketing team is aligned on revenue, but they're missing their revenue targets. They're not missing them because they're misaligned on goals. They're not missing them because they're misaligned on who they're trying to go after. They are not missing them even because, again, because they have the wrong message. They're missing these targets because the focus is not on building a healthy relationship with their target. That's the issue. Now, if we pull on that thread even further, right? So really, what we're talking about is a fundamental issue with go-to-market as it pertains to sales and marketing. And if we take that even further, go-to-market as a whole is a team sport. I'm not talking just sales and marketing. Yes, you have to have alignment there. But think about this. If you might have let's say you have the best demand gen engine and you have some of the best sales reps and you're all aligned and let's say you're even building relationships through this process. And then your contracting process is totally not customer friendly. Your billing process is not customer friendly. Your renewal process is not customer friendly. Guess what happens? The client isn't going to stick around. So you just wasted a whole bunch of money up front, right? So it's a customer service as part of this. Finance as part of this. Even procurement probably is a part of this in larger organizations. Operations for sure. And in some industries more than others. Okay, so I don't see or hear a lot of conversations around how do you align all of these aspects. And if you think about what's going on in the market as a whole, right? Automation, AI, all these things. And I don't want to sound like I'm anti-AI. I'm not, actually. I'm very pro all of this stuff, but not in the way that a lot of companies are using it. Like, we're looking at accelerating and automating a lot of stuff. Well, in that case, where does the value shift? The value shifts into experiences. And those experiences need to permeate your entire organization. Marketing, sales, customer success, the delivery, right? So if you're whether you're doing implementation work or you're in the consulting game, or even in the manufacturing space, like all the delivery of the work and the product, operations, I already mentioned, et cetera, right? The experience that your client has with your brand, and that goes across everything, every bit of communication, every touch point, every department plays in this. That's where the value starts shifting. Yet I'm not seeing a lot of those conversations, a lot of that work happening. So the alignment is not just about sales and marketing. It's about aligning at the executive leadership level first and foremost. And aligning on the fact that, hey, relationships are what's important. And to do that, we need, how does finance contribute to that? How does operations contribute to that? Obviously, how does sales and marketing contribute to that? And you're hearing some of this stuff out there around like Allbound, for example, or GTM teams rather than sales and marketing teams. There's a organizational structure change likely that needs to happen to create this kind of alignment. So when you look at that, there needs to be more effort also placed on post-sales process. So like I mentioned, customer success, delivery, et cetera. Now, that's the philosophical angle to this. So how do you create alignment, right? So I was talking at the beginning, like every piece of content out there on sales and marketing alignment is virtually identical. Doesn't matter the source. It's align on goals, have more communication, align on personas, create content together. That's more the newer stuff out there, right? Those are all true. But how do you align all of that around the relationship and building more and better relationships? So first, there's the measurement aspect to this. So what do you measure, right? Should you still measure number of meetings set? Yeah, you still need to. Like, I'm not advising people not to measure those types of things. Do you still need to align and try to predict revenue? Yes. But you should be measuring other things. So things like LTV, but LTV in a broader sense. So I'm going to throw this out there to the folks out here live. When I say LTV, what's your definition of LTV? Pop it in the comments here. Give it a few seconds for anybody who wants to pop their definition in. Anyone? Don't be shy. All right. Either if you're typing it in and I don't see it, it's probably because I've got a delay on my end, but we'll keep going. So mostly people think of what's my value of account over time. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate you. Most people think, yeah, Bob, thank you as well. So total revenue earned from a customer. Great. That's the traditional definition. Nothing wrong with it. But when you think about relationships, what do we want to get? We want a healthy relationship is going to give you some level of referrals. Thank you, everybody that's on my team that's trying to save me here. And Chris, thanks, Chris. So what would you rather have? Would you rather have a customer that pays you $100K a year and stays with you for an indefinite period of time, let's just say, and never refers you any business? Let's say they stay with you for 5 years. Let's make this more tangible. Or would you rather have a client that pays you $75K a year, stays with you for 4 years, but every year refers $100,000 worth of business to you? And in this case, we're going to make the assumption that it's qualified referrals, meaning it's the right type of customers for you. It's kind of a trick question, right? Like, you'd obviously rather take the client that technically pays you less, but the relationship is so healthy that they're your advocate and they want to refer you business all the time. Take that any day. So, and the reality is every single CRM out there has the ability to track this stuff. It's not complicated. You can track referrals, or there's platforms out there that can track that, like, in the partner space, it's like Partner Attach and things like that, those numbers. But in your internal CRM, you can track who's referring you business. And then you can start reporting on that and aligning your marketing and sales activity around, number one, getting more of your customers to do that, and then finding more customers that are like that. So that now goes into your win-loss analysis long-term and things like that. So aligning on, again, more longer-term success metrics rather than shorter-term things like ACV and pipeline and revenue. Now, you need all that. That's obviously, those are trailing. You can't do that right away. But if you set it up, you can start doing it and start shifting what you're aligning on. Because a lot of the problems that happen is there's natural churn and things like that. And churn creates urgency for more revenue, which causes marketing to go do a whole bunch of transactional stuff causes sales to go do a whole bunch of spammy outreach and things like that because there's an urgent need for revenue. What if you could avoid that by maintaining more of your client base and, oh, by the way, getting more referrals up front and that have shorter sales cycles and higher ACVs and all that kind of stuff. Okay. So the strategy that you can align on changes. And now you can start including your post-sale activity and departments into that. Right now, you can start looking at, well, what is customer success doing versus maybe not doing in the instances where you're having customers that are referring a bunch of business versus ones that aren't. And where can marketing assist? What was maybe missed on the sales side? Did we overpromise? This happens all the time. Think about any piece of software you've bought. You probably were overpromised. Most likely. Probably overpromised. The implementation didn't go as it was planned. Some of the features weren't as easy to use within your existing workflows or maybe at all as they were promised. Certain features maybe require other integrations that you weren't aware of or didn't really understand. Happens all the time with software. On the service side, maybe you were oversold on speed and timeline. Happens all the time too. So, and if that's causing a situation where those clients that were overpromised aren't referring, well, now you can fix that. You can fix that in your sales process. You can fix that in your marketing process and outreach and all this kind of stuff. So again, aligning on over time, a longer term view of what's valuable to the business is really where it's at. It's not, and again, it's not just about sales and marketing alignment, but this mindset shift to relationships rather than aligning on a revenue target, I think is where the game changes. And you can see that, by the way, in what's happening right now. You look at in the software space, you're starting to see, Nearbound or go to network as concepts that people are putting out there. Community. Oh my God, I can't talk. Excuse me. Community-led growth has been out there. Partner-led growth has been out there more recently. All these things, they're there for a reason. They're there because the traditional go-to-market playbook is broken. It doesn't work anymore. And it's not just because you have a misalignment on revenue versus meeting set KPIs. And the other thing to think about along these lines is if you look at the situation now from a macroeconomic environment and what's happening with VC dollars and capital in general, things like that. I mean, money's expensive now, and that's causing everybody to tighten their belts. Budgets are more scrutinized, et cetera, and now is when everybody all of a sudden is leaning on relationships. The problem with that is, so again, I think we all inherently know that that's what we should be aligned on. But when things are good, it's easy to get carried away. It's easy to get carried away and focus on the wrong things and the predictability of scale and automation and all this kind of stuff. When in reality, as soon as there's a big enough macro event that happens, that stuff doesn't work anymore. What does work always is relationships. Now, let me define that maybe a little bit. Relationships can be fuzzy, the way people are thinking about it. But how do you create trust. Affinity and trust. That's what you need to create with prospective customers, anybody in your TAM, obviously anybody in your ICP, your existing customers. And by doing that, when things are bad, you still have a way to move forward. But if you wait until things are bad, now you're disingenuous. And that's what you see happening a lot right now. You see a lot of companies that were never really focused on relationships, all of a sudden flocking to it and, again, running tactical plays, both from a sales and marketing perspective, without really changing their mindsets around the fact that the relationship is what's important. So, again, thinking about measurement, some things you're going to want to look at are LTV, I mentioned, and again, LTV more broadly. Look at renewal rates, look at referral rates, look at engagement rates, right? Because a healthy relationship, you're going to have good engagement. You're going to have people that consume your content and engage with it. You're going to have people that attend your events. You're going to, have them talk about you, all these kinds of things. Like there are some early indicators of what healthy relationships look like. So measure those and align on them between sales and marketing and customer success and everybody else. And there's qualitative. So definitely in the professional services space for sure. So, one of the things we look at internally for our teams is we have look back meetings. We have them on a quarterly basis, and we look back and see where do we do well, where didn't we do well. And part of what we're looking at is, well, how is it to work with this client? And if things are not going as well, is that on us or are they just not the right fit? So what you want to be looking for, in the qualitative aspect, like everybody should be running these types of look back meetings and looking at not just, hey, how successfully did we sell something, but how successful are we now post sale? And what are we learning about that? Was this the right customer or not? Do we need to adjust our ICP because it looks like we're missing something? Do we need to adjust our sales process because we're over promising or under promising, and now that's causing issues afterwards, like I was mentioning? So there are a lot of, yes, have more meetings, right? That's all. Again, look at all the content out there about sales and marketing alignment. Yes, have more meetings, have weekly meetings, have monthly meetings, have quarterly meetings, and feedback loops. But what should you be having feedback loops on? And this is where I would urge you to look at not just how long are they staying and what are they saying, but why are things happening the way they are, right? So in summary, I think there's a fundamental problem in how people talk about and think about sales and marketing alignment. It's been happening for years. There's a reason why the problem still exists. Because the tactical solutions don't address the underlying cause. One other interesting thing I'll throw out at you all is, as I was doing research for this, I couldn't find any content out there about sales and marketing alignment pre-2024 or pre-2004. Now, what I did find when searching for it is more around sales team alignment. And guess what most of that content talked about? Anyone want to take a guess? Hopefully you're not going to leave me hanging again, people. What do you think that content talked about? All right, I'll tell you. It talks about relationships in one way or another. In particular, there was an HBR article from 2000, I can't remember, 3 or 4, I think, that talked about aligning sales teams, money. Talked about sales teams aligning around relationships that they need to build. Right. So this was early ABM, if you will, almost. Target accounts, what relationship, but it was specifically focused on relationships. And there's a lot of content like that out there. So to a certain extent, this concept isn't new, but if you look at the progression over time, as technology proliferated and as we started automating more and more stuff, and as marketing became more of a performance-based discipline, and marketing moved away from a lot of brand, especially in B2B, and sales again became more of this like a corporate ranching operation rather than what was happening before. We started to see more of this misalignment happening, but it wasn't for the reasons everybody thought. It was because we lost the thing that we knew was right beforehand. So and you can see this still, by the way, in a lot of sales-led industries that are more behind on the marketing side. Look at professional services. Look at med device sales or med device. Talk to anybody doing sales in those industries, and they will tell you it's all about the relationship. A lot of it in commercial manufacturing. You know, we have a client in the commercial construction space and products and services, and talking to their sales teams, their sales leaders, it's all about relationships. So in a lot of these industries that we don't think about, we see a lot of content and things like that around SaaS, but they still know that the relationship is the right thing. They just don't always know how to align around it and how to measure it appropriately. So that's that problem there. But in other more, call it advanced industries from a marketing perspective, we've lost that completely. And that's the issue. And again, it's not new per se. We've known about it for decades. It's just been lost in this race to scale and automate. And again, I don't think there's anything wrong with scaling and automating by any means. It's just we're scaling and automating the wrong things. We're scaling and automating away the human experience that builds affinity and trust. And again, that's the issue. So I said I was going to get philosophical. I think I did. Wrapping up a little bit early. Anybody have any questions or thoughts on this? Again, this is sort of a slightly newer thread I'm pulling on. And I'm curious if anyone's got any thoughts, feedback, any sales folks that are still on that. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on this stuff. Throw out your comments or questions. Chris, I feel like I can depend on you here. Unless you're going to ask me a question about money. Anybody? All right. It looks like no questions. So with that, we're going to wrap it up. And if you do have questions or want to talk about this, you can reach out to me directly. Be happy to chat. Would love to hear from any of the sales folks. for many sales folks that are on, even not just sales. And Chris, I'm looking at you. I know you work in recruiting. I think it's a lot of the same stuff is honestly happening. If you look at a lot of the scaling that's happened in the recruiting profession, it's the same thing. I think we've tried to automate away a lot of the human touch and experience in the recruiting process. And that's why a lot of people are disenchanted with it and how companies treat it. So this applies to a lot of things, not just sales and marketing, by the way. So anyway, we'll wrap it up. If you got questions you want to chat, reach out to me directly. We're probably going to get back to our more tactically focused content next week, or not next week, but a couple weeks from now in our next session. But thank you all for joining. If you have any questions, let me know, and we'll see you all in a few weeks on Relationship-Led Growth Live.